That was kind of weird, but hey, week 17, week 18. We will improvise and adapt and overcome to that. You know what? This was a lucky 13 for the Kansas City Chiefs as they reeled off their 13th straight win in the 28-24 outcome against the Denver Broncos. A lot to unpack here. Chiefs are now 12-5. Obviously, we can shift focus to the playoffs. Playoffs? I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Sam McDowell. Sam, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Let's do this.
And also Pete Grathoff joins us, the incomparable Pete Grathoff. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, I was wondering if I was going to get esteemed, but I'll take incomparable.
Okay, you're esteemed. Well, because the esteemed one, Vahe, will join us here shortly as he finishes up his column. But let's jump right into this, guys, because I know everyone wants to know, okay, the Chiefs are in the postseason. What did this win do for them today, Sam? Let's take it started off with you. What did they do for them?
Well, we should give these people the behind the scenes, Herbie, that you and I were on the phone for the last 10 minutes trying to figure out exactly what it means for them. We know right now they're the number 2 seed in the AFC. They need the Titans to lose tomorrow in order to get the number 1 seed in the AFC. Most likely scenario, since the Titans are playing the Texans, is that the Texans lose that game, the Titans win, they get the number 1 seed. The Chiefs are number 2. So they'd have to play on AFC wildcard weekend for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career. Who they will play is just completely up for grabs, mixed bag, and that's why, Herbie, you and I were on the phone, is because it's most likely the Colts or the Chargers, and I think most likely the Chargers. But they technically could still play the Steelers. They technically could still play the Bills. They technically could still play the Patriots. So just a lot of stuff at play tomorrow. And, as much as I prefer covering NFL games on Sunday, the one advantage to covering a game on Saturday is we just get to sit back and watch what happens and then decide at the end of the night who the Chiefs are playing.
Pete, Sam there just laid out all the scenarios. You've also written a lot about the scenarios. Quickly chime in here on what Sam discussed there as to some of the likely candidates the Chiefs could face, given all these crazy scenarios at play tomorrow.
I think Sam's right. It's going to be probably the Colts or the Chargers. I think the game to watch will be that Colts game at noon. I mean, in addition to the Titans. If the Titans are blowing them out and the Colts win, and the Colts are playing at Jacksonville, so there's a high likelihood of that, then that's going to set up that winner-take-all game to decide who the Chiefs play. And if the Chargers win, that'll be the Chargers. If the Raiders win, then it'll be the Colts. So, yeah, I think it's a good day, like Sam said. Grab the popcorn and watch all the fun tomorrow because something funky is going to happen Sunday of the regular season.
The one team they can't play that's funny because they're sitting in the 7th seed right now is the Raiders. The Raiders hold the tiebreaker over the Colts, so if those two teams end up tied, the Raiders get the 6. If the Raiders lose, they're out, so they can't. That's the one team of this whole mess that they can't play. Is I think the team that they would like to play the most. The Raiders is a team that the Chiefs have dominated twice this year. So you look at the matchups and you think that's a team that they get in the playoffs, the Chiefs would really want to face. And it's the one team of this whole group that we've talked about that they cannot play in that first round.
Yeah, and we mentioned potential ideal opponent, Sam. In your opinion, given all these teams, you mentioned the Raiders, and obviously, that's a scenario that might not play out. But when you look at some of these teams, who do you think lines up well for the Chiefs? This is the opponent that you want to see them face in that opening round of the playoffs.
Well, it's the one that's the least likely, and that's if somehow the Steelers get in, which would require a Colts loss, and then the Steelers winning. I don't see that combination happening. So with the realistic scenarios, if the Chargers and Colts are the two most likely, the Chargers have given the Chiefs fits. So they've faced the Chiefs 3 times with Justin Herbert. The Chiefs needed that wild game in L.A. last year where Harrison Butker had to kick a field goal in overtime about 8 times to win that game. They needed overtime to beat them this year. And, oh, by the way, they lost to the Chargers once this year. So I think the Chargers would be a particularly difficult matchup. The Colts run the ball a lot. I know that scares some people. Fewer possessions in a game is always a good thing for the underdog. The Chiefs had a lot of trouble stopping the run today in Denver. So That's a difficult matchup as well. And that's sort of the overarching theme to this playoffs as a whole for me, which is the AFC is deeper than it has been the last 2 years when the Chiefs have gone to the Super Bowl. No matter who it's going to be, again, unless it's that crazy scenario where the Steelers get in, I think the Chiefs are going to have a really tough opponent in the AFC wildcard weekend. Of course, Titans could lose tomorrow, and the Chiefs could end up playing nobody next weekend.
And that's a scenario that so many people are really, truly open for right now. And we do now welcome the esteemed Vahe Gregorian. Vahe, welcome to the show, man. We're over here going over all the playoff scenarios.
Glad to be on. And it's funny, our audience may not know that we sometimes write our own headlines and stuff now for the digital version. And of course, we only write the ones you like. Other people write the ones you don't. But I was trying to put one of the headlines on there, and I came up with this notion that no matter where the Chiefs are seated, they're a wild card, because it's a little hard to know what we're going to get with them. And that's sort of what I tried to write about too. I mean, on one hand, they came through today, and they, it's the old make plays when you have to and find ways to win. On the other hand, that was a pretty spectacular play. That first time Melvin Ingram was forced to fumble this season, first NFL recovery for Nick Bolton. Don't have that every day. You can look at that so many different ways. My hunch is it says a lot of good stuff about kind of the makeup of this team, but it also is a reminder that there's just so many X factors.
And that's a fantastic point, Vahe, because remember last week at this time, we were talking about how we weren't too concerned about the Chiefs' loss to the Bengals. This barely win against the Denver Broncos, what does that do now for your alarm factor? How concerned are you based on what we saw today?
Well, I mean, this is maybe a silly place to go, but I like the idea of parallel universes. I'd like to have seen this game if Zane Anderson hadn't roughed the kicker. I really think that the trajectory of this game was going a totally different place. On the other hand, they were free to play defense after that. And, that's sort of a gut check in itself if you don't, stand tall when you have something bad happen. So there's some things in that are that make you wonder. I think that it's interesting to think about how little they had Tyreek Hill, basically down to their two best running backs most of the day. But that also enabled McCole Hardman to have, I think, a career day. And I don't know if you talked about this yet, but I know Sam McDowell was going to explore that a little bit. And maybe that's the sort of way they got better today.
Sam, McCole Hardman did have a career day, his first ever 100-yard receiving as a pro. What did you see out of him today that leads you to believe that he is, or he has now officially taken the next step?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long-awaited day for McCole Hardman. We've seen McCole Hardman make big plays. We've seen him score big touchdowns. We haven't seen him be this consistently involved in the offense over the full course of a game. I mean, it's the first time I was shocked when they said it was his first 100-yard game, just because we've seen him have 60-yard touchdowns in the past, and you thought, we probably got 40 more yards in that game. But it was funny, first of all, finding out that McCole Hardman didn't even know. He seemed to be the last guy on earth to find out that Tyreek Hill was going to be limited today. Finds out before kickoff, and he steps right into that. He said he felt like a switch had flipped at that moment. And the way I phrase it, it seems like that switch has been sort of stuck in neutral for a long time. The Chiefs have been waiting for this step. I mean, Herbie, how many times did you and I hear in training camp how McCole Hardman was prepared to take the next step? He was going to be that number 2 receiver, and it just hasn't materialized to the point to where, Herbie, you were writing earlier, 3 weeks ago, about McCole Hardman getting 9 snaps in a game. And by the way, that was the last time they played the Broncos, that he was only on the field for 9 snaps. And so I think they've been waiting on his development beyond just the wide receiver who can run by people. And we saw him get his punt return role stripped because he's indecisive back there. They like the fact that Mike Hughes just gets it and goes. And that was the element of McCole Hardman we saw today, is he just got it and went. 99 of his 103 yards were after the catch. So it wasn't like he was being put in great spots as far as, he's wide open deep and therefore he's going to get a bunch of chunk yards. He was doing most of the work himself. And so there are signs that stuff can carry over, and those are obvious step forwards from the McCall Hardman we've seen most of the year. But you got to couch all that and say it was one game today in Denver.
Yeah, once is a fluke, twice or more is a habit, right? That's what we all like to say all the time. If you're going to do it once, let's see it carry over. But when we talk about this Chiefs team, I know like some of us may have raised our collective eyebrows when we saw what was happening on the field today. Pete, what stood out to you the most about this game?
I think it's the need of the defense getting turnovers. I mean, you look they didn't get one last week against the Bengals, and, they ended up losing that game. And I think they had something like 24 turnovers created in the 10 games before that. And I'm telling you, if it was going south quickly there, if the Broncos put that ball in the end zone, it would have put a lot of pressure on the offense to score. I just think that was a big play, and it just highlighted to me that this defense is at its best when it's creating turnovers.
And Vahe, you mentioned the Nick Bolton play, and then Sam also touched about teams that the Chiefs are having issues, might have issues against the run. 3 of the last 4 games for the Chiefs, Vahe, the Chiefs have allowed 130 more yards rushing. Now, granted, they've won, 3 of the 4, but is this a recipe for success? And you've covered the NFL for a while, and also, Sam,
you played.
Vahe, you're a former Division I college football player. How concerned should we be when you see this big trend all of a sudden rearing its head?
I got 2 things I want to say. First of all, I want to double down on your, what was it? Once is a
fluke, twice or more is a habit.
Okay. The one I heard from a wise newspaper man is that twice is a coincidence and 3 times is a trend story. So 3 times is a little problematic and makes you wonder. I'm a little distracted too by this ongoing reference to the glory days at the University of Pennsylvania, but I do want you to know that I'm actually in the College Football Hall of Fame, because it turns out that if you ever even put on a uniform, you could print out a certificate saying that you were you belong to the College Football Hall of Fame. Sorry, I've had too much caffeine. What were we talking about?
The Chiefs' inability all of a sudden, their inability to stop the run. Like today, the Broncos, 191 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, 2 coming from Drew Lock. How alarming is this when you go into the postseason?
Well, I do think it's a concern. And, what comes with that, it's pretty obvious. But, I mean, there was about a 6-7 week period where I thought they were really tackling well. I thought the numbers may not bear this out, but I thought the much fewer yards after contact. I mean, I just thought they were very effective with the tackling, and now you're seeing some combination of missed tackles, but also room to roam. And I don't think they really were prepared for as much running as Drew Lock did. I suppose that was, muzzled a little bit in the second half, but Drew had never had a longer run than 16 yards before today in the NFL, and he just kind of weaved all through them for that 23-yard TD. So, look, I mean, it's a little worrisome. On the other hand, they've had a lot of good defensive games this year. It's just not how you want to be trending when you're at this stage.
Yeah,
Sam, your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, over the last month, I mean, prior to that month arriving, we had been talking about this defensive turnaround that happened so abruptly mid-season, and every game had sort of an excuse for why somebody said it was but. So they played well against the Giants, but it's Daniel Jones. They played well against the Packers, but Aaron Rodgers was missing. Played well against the Cowboys, but CeeDee Lamb got hurt in that game. Amari Cooper wasn't playing, the left tackle was out. So every single game, you thought, I'd like to see it against this team for this reason. And now for 4 straight weeks, you mentioned, Herbie, 3 of those games they've given up 130 yards rushing. That's concerning. The other game was last week against the Bengals, which I think we'd all agree is their worst defensive outing since this midseason turnaround. They gave up 445 yards passing. So to me, they've sort of they've been in this element of having to pick their poison a little bit rather than a team that can do both things well. Vahe mentions Drew Lock's running. that came because the Chiefs were playing man-to-man defense. There's some seams that are created when you play man-to-man defense. Guys have their backs turned to the ball. It's easier for a quarterback to scramble. We've seen Patrick Mahomes take advantage of that. So what did the Chiefs do? They played a lot of zone in the second half. The Broncos found a lot of openings against the zone, mostly in the flats and those short passes that they were playing two soft cushions. And again, it goes back to my original point where the Chiefs are sorting that, have to pick one or the other, and they're not in a spot right now where I think they feel real comfortable that they're stopping everything well. They've got to get that pass rush going because that solves all those problems.
And I think, look, Brian brings up a good point. The elephant in the room today was the field conditions. They didn't look sure-footed early. I think you could say the same for both teams. Absolutely. I thought the field turf looked just horrendous out there. For example, when Joe Tooney was pancaked, that was not his fault because his left foot just 100% gave out under him, and so he was bull rushed. Pete, you were watching the game. What was your take on what they were saying potentially about the field conditions? Why did it look like that? Why was it that bad?
Well, Andy talked a little bit after the game about it. Just the moisture and the temperature together kind of combined to make it bad. And he said they replaced some turf at midfield, if I understood that right. And
between the hashes along the whole field, I think is what he meant. But it was a little bit vague.
Yeah, so who knows what that was like? Newer turf that was in there that caused those problems. That seems like that was part of it. And I think it was a little more wet than we thought it was just watching on TV. I think there might, moisture in the air. And when the temperature drops like that, just like here in Kansas City today, I mean, it wasn't really raining, but it was wet everywhere, right? With that fog. And one interesting thing about that is they apparently did put, some of the players at least put different spikes in, because Bolton said he nearly fell because he had the different spikes in, right, in his cleats there. And when he got around midfield, but he managed to keep his footing and score that touchdown.
And Sam probably had the tweet of the day, and I noticed everybody else started copying you, Sam. But Sam was the originator on this one, and he said, "Was there a Shakira concert last night?" So how many people get that reference? I mean, as soon as I saw it, I couldn't help but start laughing. But Sam, kudos.
It was a deep pull to the Mexico City game that got canceled. And then a year later, this actually did remind me of the Mexico City game that was played. Because remember, they went back there the next year, and you just assumed, well, the field's certainly going to be in great condition this year. And I can remember LDT telling one of our former colleagues that the field was horrible and it was unsafe to play in. I thought the field looked unsafe. As much as it actually affected the game, I just thought it was unsafe. To be frank, I thought it was inexcusable for an NFL field to be in that sort of condition because you know what weather conditions you're anticipating, you know what the field needs to be for guys to be on it. And, Andy Reid answered your question, Herbie, about the spikes, which is they had to change them pregame. I mean, it was that obvious pregame that's when they had to make those adjustments. And you can make those adjustments to get better footing, but the side effect is what Pete mentioned, which is that sometimes you're going to lose your footing when you're trying to run full speed too. And that almost happened to Nick Bolton on that play. And imagine how different this conversation could be if Nick Bolton trips up at the 50-yard line because of the field conditions.
And Vahe, I have to tap into your former athlete experience here. Sorry, Sam. But this is perfect. This is a perfect lead into that. How often, going back to your days, how often did you check the field conditions, and how often did you have to change your cleats to deal with that?
This is a thing now. This is going to be a thing on every show.
This really is a thing. And, believe it or not, we played on AstroTurf at Franklin Field, and my freshman year, this was long enough ago that there was a freshman team. I snagged my ankle in the AstroTurf and broke it in 3 places and tore 2 ligaments and dislocated it. I did not get faster from that. So I'm sure I paid attention to various turfs, but I wasn't, let's be clear, I wasn't getting out there on the turf very much.
That first of all, that sounds way more like user error than a cleat issue.
Actually, the user error was the poor quarterback who was supposed to be pump faking for an out and up and didn't pump fake. And he came to the hospital every day to tell me he was sorry.
This is an interesting comment here from Rob. Defense can't dictate the game. They don't have enough playmakers. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because we certainly saw a guy that the Chiefs signed or traded for at the trade deadline. And I'm talking obviously about Melvin Ingram. He's been a playmaker. He may not show up in the stats, but my goodness, when he does show up in the stats, he's making impact plays. He was the one who knocked the ball loose from Melvin Gordon that allowed Nick Bolton to scoop and score on that play. But I think, like, when you look at this Chiefs defense, yes, they had their issues today, but playmakers, I would say Melvin Ingram is, so far, that's a solid trade for them. How many of you all would agree with that?
Yeah, and I'm just chiming in real quick and respectfully, at least semi-disagree with Rob that I feel like they didn't have many playmakers today. But I feel like they've got 5-6 guys that, Chris Jones and Frank Clark are capable of that. Melvin Ingram has provided that. L'Jarius Sneed, we've seen it from. And, I'm building up to Tyrann Mathieu here. And obviously, let's see what Nick Bolton did. All those guys can make game-changing plays, I think. I did not notice much of Chris Jones and Frank Clark today, to be honest. And the times I did see L'Jarius Sneed, it seemed to be he was a step behind and not having a great game. But I can't quantify that. I don't know how you guys saw them, but I think they all have, and others have big playmaking capabilities.
Well, big plays come down to turnovers to me. And Pete referenced that stat earlier that their win streak has been facilitated by turnovers. But I go back to it. Turnovers come because your pass rush is there. The quarterback's got to make a quicker decision. He makes a bad decision. Often he fumbles the ball. And the pass rush has not been there as consistently as needed to be for the past 3 halves. It was there in the first half against Cincinnati. The Bengals have a really bad offensive line. I didn't think they got home enough in the second half. Burrow had too much time to throw. And then today, I didn't think they pressured Drew Lock nearly as often as they needed to affect that game.
Yeah, Drew Lock was only sacked once, and that obviously came from defensive tackle Derek Nottie, and he was only hit twice today. And I see a lot of people pointing out there in the comments how Chris Jones lost out on $1 million. He was sitting on 9 sacks. 1 sack would have given him 10 for the $1 million. But back to the point here, Pete, how much do you agree with that the Chiefs don't have enough playmakers right now?
I think I kind of agree with football star Vahe that they've got playmakers, but today they didn't really I don't know, they didn't really show up, or whatever you want to say. The pass rush was not nearly good enough. And like you mentioned, Chris Jones, you would think anybody would be motivated to get to Lock today. It would be him, and I don't really even remember seeing him much. Maybe I missed something there that you guys saw. So, I think in the NFL, it's hard to be – how many teams can say they've got, like, defensive playmakers? This is such an offensive-driven league that it's tough to be a great defensive player game in and game out and make an impact on a game, I think.
We mentioned – I will say this, though. When you look at the defense today against Drew Lock, one thing that kind of also made my eyebrows pop up, and this is carrying over from last week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Tim Patrick, their wide receiver, had a 31-yard reception. Jerry Jeudy, a wide receiver, had a 28-yard reception. How concerned, we know about the defense inability to stop the run 3 of the last 4 games, but now this is 2 straight weeks now where we're seeing big plays down the field. Sam, should we be concerned about Charvarius Ward? He seems to be on the bad end of big plays.
Charvarius Ward's actually had a really good season until last week. So the capability for him to play, particularly the press coverage style that they like he's a good fit for it. He is a guy that has admittedly, his own admission, let one bad game compound into another. And so I was interested to see how he would respond today. Drew Lock missed Jerry Jeudy beating Charvarius Ward on the first drive of the game. And Vahe talked about the punt return and the roughing the punter, and accurately so, how that changed the game. You wonder how different the game would be if Drew Lock had completed a pass to a wide open Jerry Jeudy on Ward. Another ball that Drew Lock threw that beats Ward, I think it was the ball to Patrick. Best pass he made all day. Sometimes you got to give the quarterback some credit for squeezing the ball into a tight window. That's right. So concern level overall, I think Charvarius Ward is still plenty capable of playing the job that they're asking him to play. But he's not going through his best streak right now. And for a guy that, like I said, has admitted that sometimes one bad play can compound into another, I do think it's fair to worry if you're going to get his best outings in the playoffs.
Hey, I would just make one other point on that 30. It was a 31-yard pass, I think, to Patrick. I saw a lot of people felt differently on Twitter, but sometimes you do just have to tip your cap. I mean, I thought it was a perfect throw by Drew Lock, and it was right between Sorensen and Ward. And I think people want to always have somebody to blame. Sometimes the other guy makes a play, and that was inches away from being scraped by either one of those guys. It's just how it goes sometimes.
But should we be worried going into the playoffs, though, Vahe, given what, I know cornerbacks should have a short memory, but now he's got to erase this from coming off of last week.
Well, to Sam's point, I think that's the interesting sort of psychological aspect of this now, right? I think Ward at his best is pretty decent. I don't know if stuff's getting in his head. I wish that our former colleague that we like to talk about but not say his name in case he's watching were around, because he's sort of the Charvarius whisperer. I mean, there was literally nothing Charvarius wouldn't tell him. I don't know if we're going to have that access.
I don't even know if he might just say, we'll get that to you. So Sam Mellinger, if you're watching, we need to hear from you. I don't see you in the comment section. Let's talk about the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, 27 of 44 for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns. How impressed were you with this game, knowing that he did not have Tyreek Hill? And he also led the team in rushing, 54 yards rushing after Darrell Williams suffered a toe injury. So how impressive was his game, Sam?
Well, I mean, it's particularly impressive when you consider that Vic Fangio defenses have given Patrick Mahomes trouble even this year. I mean, what he completed was about 15 out of 29. Is that right, Herbie? The first meeting, which was the second worst completion percentage of his career. Vic Fangio is, as much as the topic of the Super Bowl defense that the Chiefs saw overarching to this year has been just an ongoing thing. It's really Vic Fangio that started all this. I mean, he's played this shell defense long before the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did. I think Tampa got a lot of what they did from Vic Fangio, because what gets lost when you win 13 straight games against a team is that you have one element of your scheme that works pretty well against that team. And that's been what Vic Fangio has done on defense. So I thought Mahomes had one of his better games of the year this year. I think he's playing his best football as the playoffs come. So it's sort of the inverse of what we just talked about with the defense. I don't think there's a better time for Mahomes to go into the playoffs. I don't think there was a better team to play against, because he saw the most difficult type of defense that he's going to see, and most likely what he's going to see in the postseason.
Vahe, we always hear Patrick after all these post-game press conferences saying that, he thinks the best is still yet to come for this offense. What more is there left that we need to see out of this offense for Mahomes to be correct on that?
Well, I mean, having a full complement at his disposal makes a little difference. I mean, they adapted really well without Tyreek Hill today, basically without him. And I'd have to look back at Kelsey's numbers, but I didn't think he was anywhere near as big a factor as he normally would be. It might be just that the Broncos did a good job swamping and swarming him. But I think you see another aspect of his maturity here with, force feeding it to Hardman in some ways. I mean, understanding that they're going to be a better team if Hardman can be really dependable. It was too bad. There were it looked like probably twice at least there were some communication breakdowns with Pringle. I think Pringle is so close to being almost a breakout guy, but that he holds himself back with one or two mistakes in a game. And Hardman had such a history of mistakes and Butterfingers that you wondered if he was ever going to really kind of get it together or at least get the full trust of the quarterback. I think today fast forwards that a little bit.
You agree with that, Pete?
Yeah, I thought he looked great, especially the couple plays there with Pringle that, I don't know that they just got to get on the same page. Patrick's mind is so advanced, I think, in a football sense that, he's always looking for something specific that receivers aren't always giving him. I mean, that happens every game with a receiver, I feel like, where he's telling a guy he should have gone left or right, or gone deeper. I thought he looked great too. There was a couple of vintage Mahomes plays. One where he threw back across the field. That was an incredible play. That's of all the guys on the team, that's one I don't worry about, especially like you mentioned, they don't have Hill. I'm sure that the Broncos put a lot more emphasis on Kelsey, and you take those two guys away, it's going to be a lot more difficult for the offense to look like it normally does.
And we do need to talk about Tyreek Hill because this is a fair question from Steve Brock. What is Hill's status moving forward? Sam, what did Andy tell us post game about what was going on with Tyreek Hill and why he didn't see so much action?
Yeah, he said he felt his heel, some soreness in his heel, which is an injury that he's played through in the past. I mean, 2 years ago he had that injury. I think 3 years ago he might have had that injury as well. But said he landed on it in pregame warmups, came to him in warmups and told him about it. I do wonder if Tyreek Hill would have played his normal allotment of snaps had this been a playoff game. Same for Darrell Williams. We saw him on the sideline. It's not like he spent the rest of the game in the locker room. He still had his pads on, still on the sideline. But he also came up lame on the last snap of the first half with the toe injury. And those are two valuable pieces for the Chiefs offense. We don't know what's ahead for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We keep hearing he's close, and I do think we could hear on Monday or Tuesday that he's going to be practicing this week. But regardless, Darrell Williams still factors into this offense, even if you consider him the backup to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think going forward, we might even see him be more of a 50-50 guy if he's healthy.
Yeah, and the other thing about Darrell Williams, if he all of a sudden if he can't play next week, and if Edwards-Helaire can't play, now the Chiefs are down to Derek Gore and Jerick McKinnon. And I see the comments are saying that Jerick McKinnon did look good, and he did. This is the guy that Sam and I and Vahe, we all saw what Jerick McKinnon could do out there at training camp, and we finally see it in the game. Why did it take so long for them to finally get McKinnon into the offense, Vahe?
Well, I do think, you guys can correct me on this, but there's been just a matter of getting fully healthy at the right time with some snaps available. That whole combination of things. This was a nice little spotlight moment for him. And that touchdown, I think it was a 14-yard pass. He showed a lot of what I think you guys in particular thought you saw in him. He's got some juice and he's pretty dynamic. And if they don't get Edwards-Helaire back, I think we could see a bit more of him from what he showed today.
The other injury of note today, at the end of the game, obviously Travis Kelce on that first down catch, he came up banged up, and I know a lot of people were concerned because TV cameras caught him limping back to the locker room area. But Andy Reid specifically said, no, they kind of like gave one of those. He's fine. So as of right now,
I was a little worried that he said it a little too fast, without, fully embracing the question. But I assume he's also accurate. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, because if Kelce all of a sudden is banged up, now all of a sudden the Chiefs are going into the playoffs kind of limping, and that's not what you want. You want to be healthy, but they came out of this game with a 28-24 win. They're now 12-5, 13 straight wins over the Denver Broncos. As we get ready to wrap up here, Sunday, obviously a huge day for the Chiefs as they figure out who their opponent is. Let's go right around the horn here, and I'm going to start with Sam. We kind of touched on it earlier in the show, but let's close it out with it. Who is the ideal opponent for the Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs if they don't have the number one seed?
Yeah, because the ideal opponent is nobody. That the Titans win or the Titans lose tomorrow. So, like I said, I think that crazy scenario where the Steelers get in would be their best, but that's such a low percentage. I feel like it's cheating to even mention that one. So I think you're picking between the two most likely scenarios, the Chargers and the Colts. And which one of those two teams is more likely? I think the Chargers we've got evidence that that's a difficult matchup for the Chiefs. And so I think just by process of elimination there, I'm going to say that I think they would rather see the Colts than the Chargers.
Vahe.
I like that thinking, and I think that's right. We know, and Sam has pointed this out before, both on this and in print, I think, that This quarterback matchup with the Chargers has the makings of kind of a classic for over the 3 times they've met, 3 times, I guess, right? Or 3 that they've played each other. And I think that the Chargers think they actually have the Chiefs, not the Chiefs number, but that they know they can beat the Chiefs, and not just know that, but have demonstrated it. So I think if you had your choice, you'd roll the dice against the Colts. Pete?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, Justin Herbert or Carson Wentz? And I know the Colts have Taylor, right? Running back?
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, yeah.
Sorry, blanking on his name there for a second. But, this is a quarterback league, and I feel like, you want to face the Colts. And the other X factor here is the game's going to be at Arrowhead, so I think that's going to give them a distinct advantage. They've played a lot better at home than they have on the road.
Yeah, and so it's unanimous. I think if the Chiefs had their pick, if they are the number 2 seed, and with the 2 likely scenarios for their opponents, it's got to be the Colts. Jonathan Taylor is an all-world running back, but a lot of the running that he does is in a nice confined indoor facility up there in Indianapolis. Get him outdoors. Let's see what happens. And you're right, Carson Wentz or Justin Herbert, I think that's a no-brainer. You got to take you got to take Carson Wentz. So a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. We'll know for sure who the Chiefs will play at the end of the night. And so the schedule will come out. We'll know what their seed is. But I know, like the rest of us, we're going to be tuned in, especially to that Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans game. And, hey, if the Texans somehow pull out a win, we're off next week, guys. But if the Titans do win, though, then, hey, we're going to be working, and we'll figure out if we're working Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Maybe it's a Monday night game. Hey, prime time, right? But, hey, for everyone, for my colleagues, Vahe Gregorian, the former, now that we know, a college football Hall of Fame sports reporter, Sam McDowell, Pete Grathoff, and for our producer, Monty in the back, I'm Herbie Teope. This is the Kansas City Star, and you watch Sports Beat Live.
Thanks.